Hey everyone, today we're in Project XJ 2-door. This is our new project vehicle. We just went over it and found a number of items that need to be addressed immediately. Not to slam the previous owner in any way, this was sold to us fairly cheap with an explicit warning that it was a project vehicle. It was not ready for daily driving. And we're discovering that that is in fact true, so we're going to deal with those things. First thing here is not actually hypercritical, but it's an easy replacement, so let's just go ahead and do our oil filter cap. This here is just loose and broken. This is Dorman 80984. We did end up replacing this on the other XJ as well and did a quick short about it after it broke off in our hands. Mini 4.0 oil caps have a ratcheting mechanism that tends to break when someone tries to remove the cap from a hot valve cover. This almost happened to us a second time when we were 175 miles from home in Rifle, Colorado, outside of a Maverick gas station where we had just realized that the oil pressure had dipped a bit, and it turned out we were more than 1.5 quarts low. Looks like this stem here does need replacement, although I think at the moment it is actually oil tight. It's just this flange lip that's busted off. But we can come back here and add a little black RTV just to make sure it stays watertight when we do our first engine wash. Now this here is what's really concerning us. It's completely loose. It was basically just tucked back on. I'm really surprised it started as easily as it did and made it home. But okay, negative's tied down and that's what we don't want. We need to get that off right away so we can start working on these other items. And this here usually is a 10. Nope, that one's bigger. Maybe it's a 12? Well, I'm not sure what it is, but that'll turn it. We have now disconnected our negative. And, oh man, look at that. That one busted right off, so that's why they'd already had to put on the second one, which was badly crimped, badly soldered. I don't know who is actually responsible for doing that. It's just, if you see stuff like this, that's bad electrical. And if you don't deal with bad electrical, you're either going to have a vehicle that's very unreliable or just plain catches fire for fun. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Hang on to that. That's pretty much trash. This is pretty much trash because that one's breaking off too. So today we're going to re-terminate this and put it on a new terminal. And also run a second new lead over to the ground here. Okay, now going back. Let's see what condition it's in inside the jacket here. Oh man, corrosion's going back up in there a little ways. This is the hidden damage you often don't see on these. However, it might just be superficial. Maybe a little white vinegar. Okay, I got a little solution white vinegar right here, so let's just let that sit down in there for a minute while we get on the rest of this. Now at the moment we are disconnected from the negative, so there's no longer any risk of touching things here. 12 again. And that there, yeah, look at that. Those are both ready to come out too. These also need a lot of cleaning, so let's dig into those in a minute and see what's going to take. This here, I'm not saving. Okay, so this here is just a short lead to the post. This here is the long one going down to the starter. Let's go and start by cutting this off a little bit back. It looks like I got plenty enough lead to work there, especially since it's dangling loose down by the starter. Okay, now that I like better. I'm seeing all kinds of shiny copper in there. I don't think we have any corrosion work back up in it. And then this here, same deal. Now the question I have is, can we terminate these into one terminal? Reason being is just to get a screw terminal, I'm going to try and use these. They're probably not ideal for a Jeep application, but we don't have like a winch or anything like that connected here, so those should cinch up nicely. The terminal posts are still very clean. That's surprising, but we'll work with it. And I'm going to use this just to make sure everything's nice and clean. So now the question is, what can we use for a terminal? I'd really like to use these. These are actually welding lugs, but they have an actual smaller opening and better copper overall than whatever these cheapies are. Now these are rated for pretty large conductors like number 2, so they're not going to clamp right over a single conductor for sure. 2 of them together, maybe. So before we go there, let's get down in here and see if I can reroute the cables from the starter so they're more sensible. Because right now they're kind of going down and around and wherever they want to. A lot of this has previously been torn apart, and so this harness here is broken up. And in fact, it might just make sense to replace all of that split loom. Now I don't have high temperature split loom, I just have the regular stuff from Harbor Freight. But over on this side of the engine, I think it'll be good enough for a while. So if I take this off, yeah, that's literally all that's left of what was a complete wrap down there. However, that does give me the opportunity to try something else I've been wanting to do. Since there is literally no secondary protection on this wire, whatsoever between positive and the terminal on the starter. I've always thought it would be kind of slick just to add some fire sleeve on that section. We can take this little section and just wrap this wire with it. So let's get that out of there. This heavy gauge wire to the starter is fed directly by the battery with no fuse, a common practice on older vehicles when practical fuses could not survive the starter's inrush current. But that also means a short on this wire, such as in the starter or from a tool slip during maintenance, would melt all the insulation from bow to stern and enable additional shorts against the block, frame, or other unfortunate neighbors. And that's the origin story for a nice hot fire. Sleeving the cable in fire retardant fiberglass and silicone might delay that process long enough for the conductor itself to fail like a fuse and break the circuit. Or it might not, but it can't hurt to try. The downside is that the silicone is not very abrasion resistant, so we'll need to sleeve over to that with split loom for mechanical protection. And I think we're going to need this one here now that I've loomed it. It's a fairly hefty diameter, but it should do the trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here where it's hardest to reach, grab this wire and the newly wrapped positive and start sliding that on like that away. This has gotten pushed up against the oil filter nearly, and I do not like that. One thing that really kills wires that people don't pay attention to, especially if they've done some work and had to move things around, is that you don't want wires just chafing on things. They're supposed to be routed, secured, and they'll usually last a very long time, even with heat damaged insulation in some cases, as long as they don't move and chafe or crack. Okay, so this is more like it. Now this needs to route around up here too. I'm also seeing the AC clutch wire just loose up here. Need to figure out where that attaches and secure it down. Let's get a little extra and we'll finish trimming it here in a minute. Again, this is an empty section. I don't have any wire routed through it yet. Never make that mistake or you will hate your life for a while. All right, how much do you want to fight me here? There we go. Okay. So now I see this little cluster of wires here, dividing a couple different directions. Let's get some more tube on that as well before we finish this job here. This is going to go better with the battery out of the way. So let's see if it'll lift or not. Oh yeah. Should have just done that in the first place. Here's the battery temperature sensor. If you didn't know you have one of these, well, you do. We'll replace this too. But the acid indeed cleaned all that right up. Just get a little distilled water and rinse it off. A little bit of mess down here, nothing serious. Bolts for the battery tray are nice and tight. With the battery out of the way, we do have a better view to what's going on down here, and I think we can get to this much more easily. Just break off the whole thing now that I've got better access and replace it. Yeah, that tape there, also fried. It's not like we're losing anything here. All right, so that takes care of the alternator down there. This, I'm also not thrilled about. This needs to come off next though. I think we need to reroute this positive. This is a fusible link, by the way. It replaces the 100 amp mega fuse that would have, or 200, whatever it was rated, would have been in the older ones. But I don't like it sticking out this direction. It either needs to go that way or come back this way. And look at that. Look at that. Oh man. There is literally less than an inch between this exposed bracket there and that big old positive terminal. Who came up with that? Okay, it took a minute, but we now have all this cleaned up. There's some extra wire here that's kind of coiled. I don't know why. But for now, it's cleaned up. It looks OEM. It's going to work. These two here, however, we need to get put into a terminal lug. And it looks like these are not number 8 like I thought. I think they're more like number 6. So I'm thinking one of these big welding lugs will probably do it. I mean, that's a nice tight fit, so I think that's probably about the right amount of cable for that lug. The question is whether I can actually get a good cold weld on them by crimping. And to make sure they don't flop around while I'm trying that, I'm going to do just this. Put a little bit of tape right here on the end. They seem to be all the way in. This here, crimper, you push in these here and then rotate these dials to get to the right connection. But here I'm at number 2, which is supposed to be the barrel size of this terminal. So let's find out if it works or not. Well, it does, but that's not enough to actually hold those in there. So let's try going to a number 4. I don't know if I'm going to do this time. There we go. That felt more like it was supposed to. Let's find out if it actually secured the cables or not. They don't look like they want to come out. But just to be sure of that, we can heat this up and put solder in there if we want to. Okay, so ideally this form what should be called a cold weld, but since I have a nice fresh roll of electrical solder here and a torch, let's try heating the terminal and then flooding that with solder once everything gets good and warm. And just in case, do have the fire extinguisher on standby. Okay, now it's starting to flood. Okay, I don't know how ideal that is, but we'll just let it cool down slowly so that the solder doesn't crystallize or fracture. If nothing else, hopefully it keeps water from outside of the connector. Now over here I've got somewhat mixed feelings. I was able to buy this, and one possibility is just to go buy another one to replace the existing cable, but I don't think I can stack lugs on top of the things I'm using. So even though I don't like it, I think it might be worth just cutting one of these off and doing the same thing again with these two cables. That was $10 at the auto parts store, so if I just screwed that up, that's how much that mistake would cost. What I'm doing here can cut into some of the inner strands if you get really rough with it. By doing it this way, you're more likely to get the cable jacket off without too much tragedy. This is not as clean as I was originally hoping. Let's hit it with some sandpaper just to see if it helps. Still some corrosion up in here, so I guess if we ever have trouble with it starting, we'll have to come back to it, but it doesn't look like it's actually eating away at the copper. It's just made it a little messy up in there. There we go. Now what I did before seemed to help. So let's actually start by crimping it as a number 2 and then crimp it as a number 4 and get that extra pinch. See, that's way too easy. That's not a solid crimp, I don't think. Went sideways that time, but either way. Okay, that's cooled off plenty. So I feel the heat coming off that one. That's captive, so we're good there. This here is an anti-ox grease. I'm going to try putting that on my screw terminals just like I did down here on this. But we'll see what the copper terminals do over time. If it turns out this is only a temporary solution and we have to work out something else, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Go ahead and use a little of the same grease there. And on the connection, which goes this way down, I guess. Now that the battery's out, this is a lot easier. So I've tied up all the wires. Both my positives are back to where they should be, as is these two over here, and then both my negatives are back to where they should be. Which means if all is going well, we should be able to put the battery back in, put the positive on, and then tap the negative without getting a big shower of sparks. Then we reassemble. Get those 3 bolts down there with a little bit of rust converting primer, but not the battery sensor. I don't think it means much, but why not do it since we have it? All right. I did go ahead and get the protective felt sleeves, and these actually come with some dielectric grease to go on here. Red positive, positive, positive. We're back in the way we're supposed to be. Now we go put that on. It's supposed to compress in place as this tightens down. One more thing I still wanted to do here, just put a little insulation sleeve around these. This one always makes me bite my nails a little bit, even though I have a fire extinguisher, but here we go. Looks good. So let's just rest it on and see if the lights come on in the cabin. Okay, we're good. So let's go ahead and finish the job here. This hose was originally sleeved to keep it from chafing on the battery post, so we'll just go ahead and do that like in kind, because why not? All right, clear the engine bay and see if it starts. The final thing we needed was the battery restraint bracketry. The crosspiece was missing and a new replacement was ordered online. We thought the tie-down to the radiator crossmember was also missing and figured that was worth making from strap steel we already had. But we didn't get the dimensions exactly right, and the original piece later turned up in the glove box. After weighing options, I finally decided just to go on eBay and spend a bit of money for replacement covers. And it installs just like this. A couple little pieces go down in there, and then that just snaps in there. That just provides a nice little cover against accidental short circuits being made against there. When all was said and done on the electrical side, we had this to show for it. One battery, tied down with OE-compliant bracketry, the PDC with the side terminal reoriented and covered, and a neatly tied up loom that included upgraded protection around the unfused conductor from the battery to the starter's main terminal. Short of doing a heavy-duty cable upgrade, which doesn't help much on a stock build where the regular conductors are adequate, this is as good as it gets. Since that's just an inlet pipe, it's not a valve or anything, that could be a permanent fix, but we'll eventually get around to replacing it, I'm sure. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. It's hard to make electrical look interesting, but some days that's the job. And if you're thinking that's 17 minutes of my life I won't be getting back, well, 17 minutes is about the rough time frame between first ignition under the hood to a fully engulfed vehicle finally having water poured on it by the fire department. Yeah, you don't want that. You don't know me. Or if you do, you want it on your terms, not the Jeep's. So, get on that if you've been ignoring it. Keep a fire extinguisher in your vehicle, and stick around to see what we come up with in episode 3. Name a system on this Jeep, and we're probably going to have to touch something on it. Has anyone seen my phone?